one. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Margaret Fontana Media podcast show. And this is in partnership today with Professor Kathy Magrino, and she is the educator for TCNJ's class for social media and public relations. And the reason why I'm part of this is to talk about podcasting and how to podcast. And we've met with some of you on Zoom. A lot of you were on, which was really great. I got to see you and speak with you. So today we're talking about and we're answering all of the questions of the winners of your questions that were submitted for this particular assignment. And so I'm going to throw it over to Professor Kathy Magrino, your Professor Kathy Magrino, and let's get started. But I'm totally excited. You guys submitted a lot of great questions. I saw like the full amount of questions, and everybody's thinking really, really like very thoughtfully. And I think you guys are really thinking through the process because we talked a little bit about process. And so, Professor, I'll give it to you.
Thank you, Margaret, and thank you for this opportunity to work with you on this podcasting section. And I appreciate all the time and energy you've given to us so far, and that you always give, with no hesitation. And I really appreciate that. So let's get started. So we, as you know, we asked the students to come up with their best questions about podcasting to ask, and then I had the students. There's 25 of them in the class, and then they each voted and ranked their favorite questions from 1 to 5. And these are the top 5. The number one actually was an overwhelming winner with, like, when I do my point system, it scored like 28 points on the scale. And I think the next there was a tie for second. Then I think the next most popular questions or the best questions were at 21 points. So just to give you an idea about, these were really, it was hard to pick from all 50 questions because they were all great. But here we go. We're going to answer the top 5, and then I'll also mention the runners-up. And so the winners, they're all winners in my heart, but the winners are.
They are.
The first question was from Skylar.
Right.
And she's asking, when podcasting with another person, is it done as more of a conversation that flows naturally and veers into whatever both people want to speak on? Or is there an outline and specific topics that must be stuck to, making the conversation stiffer?
Yes. So to be quite honest with you, I think Skylar actually answered her own question in a sense, because in the process of producing a podcast, there's always like a pre-interview, there's like the actual interview, and then there's post-production. So while you are in the interview, part of preparing for the interview is actually giving a solid maybe 3 to 5 questions for the person you're interviewing. And Professor Magrino can probably share, I had sent her, I'm going to send her a template of my standard 3 to 5, but it's basically like your journalistic questions, right? Like who, what, when, where, why, and how. And yes, you really should try and stick to the 3 to 5 questions, because it'll help you really stay on track with your interview. And it'll help you not ramble on, because sometimes when you're in a conversation, yes, it should be free flowing. It should be natural. It should be organic. You should be actually enjoying the conversation and not like, oh my God, looking down, staring at the questions, and then like looking for a minute at your guest. So yes, I would say it's about preparing. It's about having those 3 to 5 questions. It's about staying on track, and it's about staying on time. You don't want it to run for too long. So that's a great question, but it actually has multiple answers because it's really about the full process. Right. Excellent question.
And I will share that template. I do have a copy of that.
Okay,
template.
great.
Share it with me. So I will share that today too.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, so there was a tie, like I said, for second. First, we had Dana C's question. Mm-hmm. In a world so saturated with podcasts of all types, how do you suggest that a potential podcaster differentiates himself from the crowd?
Perfect. Yes. And so the way to differentiate yourself from everyone else, I mean, if you go into the podcasting world, podcasting is like one of the top, what they call mediums, which is like one of the channels where people are actually producing content on. And because you can produce from your phone, there's so many like different platforms that allow you to do it quickly and efficiently. And again, from your phone, you can do it from your phone. You don't necessarily have to do it from your laptop or your tablet. I think what's important is to kind of like think about what you like talking about. And if you're saying to yourself, or maybe your assignment becomes producing a podcast, you have to think about what is it that you like to talk about. You can't really pretend that you like to talk about the stock market if you don't know anything about the stock market. You can't pretend to talk about topics that don't interest you, because that will actually unmotivate you. You won't produce the podcast, and you'll definitely sound like you don't know what you're talking about. And then if you invite a guest on and maybe this person's an expert in the field and you're not, you can prepare, but it's like, I think there's a missing piece of like love for what you're doing if you're talking about a topic that is not interesting to you. So you really kind of have to think about what you like. Maybe it's talking about relationships, maybe it's talking about tech, maybe you're into like surfing, maybe, and it doesn't have to do with business. It doesn't have to do with like some type of office industry. Like it could be recreational, you know, like it could be about cooking, it could be about fashion, it could be about anything. And I think when something is successful, it's because you've actually invested the part of you that really loves talking about it. And I think that's what actually makes it good. Scott, a good question. These are, no wonder why they're winner questions. These are excellent.
They're actually all excellent. I wish we could do them all, but for the sake of time.
I know, right? There's always time.
But we are available, and you and I are available to the students if they do, want their question answered, whatever. They can reach out to us at any time.
Yes, of course they can.
Okay, and so tied for second place, in a sense, is Brittany's question. Brittany asks, how do people who don't have a large following but want to start a podcast promote one that will gain followers and sponsors in order to make money?
Right. Perfect. Another great question. So I think what this really boils down to is thinking about your personal network and your personal, what I call your social capital. And I just did a post on this week because for this reason, like some people might be introverts and they don't really have a big following, or maybe you don't have that many people on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever platforms you're on, even Snapchat. I think this is where you have to kind of say to yourself, like, do I want to promote my content to my friends? And your first base of network really boils down to your friends and family, and they become part of your social network, your social capital. And, I think that's like a good place to start, because who better to support you than people who know you and who are like, oh my God, I know she totally loves, fashion. I'm going to like it. And that helps. And then somebody in your network might say, oh, my friend, Kathy really loves talking about fashion. I'm going to share it for her because my friend, so-and-so is actually the head of whatever at some fashion company. So there's always like this domino effect that happens. I don't think you should get caught up on followers and how many people you have, and is anybody going to listen? Do I have downloads? What are my, who's following me? Those things are just like, those are very cosmetic things that I think we think about from like a materialistic standpoint. When you get to like a corporate place and you really have to start talking about metrics and how many people really are following you and how many downloads does something receive or views, those things become important because there's money and budgeting that surrounds how things are produced. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking to make money off of a podcast, you can do that easily through one of these platforms, one of these platforms that are out there. But what's required of you is consistency and really being able to produce a podcast weekly or every 2 weeks. Like you can't produce one and then like disappear for a month. Like it just doesn't work that way. And that's for all things. So it's like even Instagram, if I posted one photo today and then I don't go back on for like 6 months, like, do you really know what's going on with me? Do I seem like I'm consistent? No. So people kind of drop off when they think you're not consistent. So there's opportunity in all those spaces, but you have to be consistent and you have to really do your research on where and what platform you want to use. And I wouldn't worry about likes and followers and money. That comes last. Like those are things that come once you start succeeding with being consistent with your content.
Right. I think your purpose should be more than the money part, because otherwise you're not going to have fun doing this. That's what you're.
Yeah, I mean, and guess what? I always say money comes when you're like fulfilled in all the other spaces and places. Like once everything's like awesome, then like all of a sudden, like the money is just like organic and you're like, wow, I didn't know I can get however much for a download or because I just did a sponsored ad. I do those for my podcast. Sometimes there's sponsored ads that get presented to me, and it's up to me whether or not I want to do them, and then that adds to my podcast. But that comes only from, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, the sponsors approach you. Is that what happens? Okay.
Yeah, they do. But again, you have to be consistent and your content has to be good. So
good.
Those are two things to invest in.
It's great advice. Thank you. And that actually segues right into our next question, was from Giselle, right? It's about followers. She says, when promoting a podcast on your social media, how do you know that your followers are interested in your podcast? How can you branch out and advertise outside of your followers? Even if you use hashtags, what if it's a name no one is likely to search up on hashtags?
Well, it depends. When you say hashtag, are you talking about branding your own hashtag? So like if I were to brand myself, which sometimes I do, you'll see Margaret Fontana Media as my hashtag. It's a really long hashtag. There are other big instructors out there who also do the same thing, and they brand themselves. And so I would more likely use hashtags that are like about the topics that I'm speaking on. So if I'm speaking about social media, if I'm speaking about wellness or health, or digital media, marketing, all the different things, or video or production, film, whatever it is that is happening in my world, or maybe whoever my guest is, I'm going to use those hashtags. So if we're speaking specifically about hashtags, but the way to kind of like get outside of your circle is when you do have those guests. And so a good way to really get some more traction is to ask your guest to repost, reshare, use your hashtags, use all those things. And then what should happen is like all of that traffic should then come back to you. This way, then it opens up like more spaces and places for you to become like the more exposed person. Because really that's what you want. You want more traction and more reach. And then again, like we talked about that domino effect, that's what gets you more followers and being consistent. So if you don't have a guest, that's fine too. I wouldn't suggest to spend money on ads, because I know a lot of people I've had people come to me and ask me like, should I spend money on an ad to promote my podcast, my post, or whatever? I actually say no, like stay away from doing that, because you really have to put in the work from an organic standpoint. And just side note, right, you have platforms that are like coming and going right now, and a lot of like uncertainty. And this was a post that I did yesterday, or I think yesterday, about, let's use the example of TikTok. So TikTok may or may not go away depending on like a legislative decisions, right, coming straight from the White House. And in thinking about that, it's like content can go away tomorrow. Like if you're promoting the heck out of something on one platform, it all goes away. So you kind of have to like think very evenly and build your content in one place. So I would suggest that it's really about kind of manning it and keeping it in one library for yourself, and then like distributing out to all these different places. So you really should never be married to one idea of promoting. Right. I think the promotion idea and marketing changes on a daily basis.
So this brings up like a good point actually, as far as doing a comprehensive kind of cohesive whole campaign, not just the podcast. Maybe like make sure you have a blog or a website where you can manage everything, and that's where you're sharing out your content.
Yes.
From, right.
Right. And to your expertise, Professor Magrino, I mean, this is where you kind of take that step back from like a marketing perspective and you say, okay, well, there's pre-marketing, there's your collateral, there's writing, there are captions, there's SEO. Then the SEO gets gets indexed into Google, and that's how people actually find things.
We should define SEO for them too. It's search engine optimization, SEO. So you might want to look up, that, or ask me about that.
And that basically is like, when you go to Google, you type in, Professor Magrino's podcast. And so like, then it would come up, and then it would come up with all of the keywords associated to what her topics are, to what she's known for. And, that's actually the first step, but that's a different part of how to optimize your marketing outside of podcasting. So that's like another piece, which is like a useful, unbelievable piece. It is probably the secret sauce to everything. But
optimization is also a keyword that you'll hear, especially in marketing majors. If you go to studying marketing, you'll understand that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you
Good
for
question. Excellent question.
Yes, excellent question. All right. And last but not least, we have our fifth most popular question, and it's from Kelly. And Kelly asks, where do you believe the future of podcasting lies? Do you believe podcasts are simply just the new trend, or will recorded video podcasts continue to evolve as the newest great form of social media?
Yeah, I mean, that's a multi-answer kind of question, but yes, I think that video podcasting and podcasting are going to continue to grow. And I think what has actually exploded the element of podcasting and video podcasting has been the fact that we are in a pandemic, right? And I think during that time of lockdown, that actually accelerated a lot. Yeah, it accelerated the idea of digital, and it accelerated the idea of video. So every person, that has done work during the pandemic, or maybe you were just, doing things to kind of, create content on your own or whatever, you basically have become a content creator. Everybody, if you've jumped on one Zoom call, you are now a video content creator. Or if you've scheduled a Zoom call, you've been pushed into this space of having to create. And because we are now in the space of like where your iPhone connects you to a Zoom call, or whatever smartphone you have, your tablet connects you to any kind of video consumption, that is the accelerated state that we're in, which is amazing, which is great, because that goes to show you that technology is moving at a very fast pace, and now technology has almost had to meet this accelerated reality. And
the connection has accelerated everything too, I think, and that need for connection is what's driving, I believe. I mean, people want, because we were forced to, hunker down and stay home and, not be in our offices or not be in our classrooms or whatever. Now we're looking for other ways to connect, and I think the audio and visual world obviously is just the digital world in itself is just going to
right. And I think, and I may have mentioned this in one of the classes too, but like for me personally, this is why I took my podcast from strictly audio, because in the last year and a half, I was producing only audio. And that was because that was like the norm and the benchmark for the podcast. And because of this acceleration, and because of the need and the actual opportunities inside of what's available, even with Zoom or Skype or Google Meet, classrooms, all of these things that are available, that prompted me to put a lot of my podcast into this video format, because I think it actually connects you a little bit more. And I think the format is great, so look at someone like Joe Rogan. He just moved his studio out of LA into another area in Texas. And, he went from being an audio YouTube podcast to now being probably more and only video, I think people really tune in to watch him. It's a show. Basically, we're like reversing audio to TV, this is like really TV production.
Right. It's very, I love it. I love what's going on, actually. I think it's very
Yeah,
exciting to be
it is.
part
And I think that we have to be very open
of. Mhm.
to technology, because it's just, like Monday morning, you could get a notification that like, oh my God, all these things are now available that you can do from your phone. And you're
Right.
like, I didn't know I could do that. So
It's great.
I think it's great,
It is great. All right. So how are we doing on time? Because I have runner-up questions.
Yeah, we're good.
Are we good? All right. So we're going to do them real quick. We'll try to keep them shorter because these are,
Okay.
again, like these questions are so great. They're all so thorough and so many
Yes.
complex
Okay.
parts to them. All right. So our runners up, we have Sasha's question. Depending on the podcast, they can range in length from 15 to an hour. How do you know the appropriate length to make your podcast without disengaging the audience from the duration of the podcast?
Yeah, I would say you have to stick to a standard 15 to 20 minutes, unless you are someone like Joe Rogan that goes for an hour to 2 hours.
Right. That's
But
long.
yeah, but people's attention span is very short. So if you really want to be concise and just get to the meat of what you're trying to get from maybe your guest or the topic, this is why being prepared is very important, because you hit those 3 to 5 questions, you get the who, what, when, where, why, you end it in 20 to 25 minutes. So what we're doing right now is definitely more than 25 minutes, but this
Right.
is a teaching, this is more for teaching purposes.
Right. Right.
Right. But I would say you should really not go any more than 25 minutes if you have to go 25
Yeah,
minutes.
honestly, I think if we were doing something just as a podcast for ourselves, we would maybe stick to like 3 questions, answer them, and then
Yeah.
save the rest for the next one, like break it up.
Right.
But,
And so to answer your question about running on time, so yeah, let's scoot through them, because I want to be able to get this in the next like 3 minutes. This way.
all right. So thank you for that. And then I'm going to share the template too, because your template will help people stay on target.
Yeah, that's great.
All right. Tyler had the other running up question. It was from start to finish. How long does it take to create a podcast episode? In other words, is it a big commitment, or is it time consuming? Yes.
Yeah. Yes, it's time consuming, and yes, there's production. There's actually production involved, and meaning you can actually do all the production from your phone if you have
Right.
the certain apps and things like that, and that requires a lot more research for you and maybe even question answers. But it definitely takes a while. It takes some, more so the preparation, because you don't want to sound like goofy and off about what you're talking about. And then you're like, oh, I got to re-record that.
Right.
So
I think the more preparation you do, the more professional the results will be.
absolutely. Yes.
All right. So McKenna had the last runner-up question, and she asks, what are some tips for potential new podcasters on a budget in terms of finding decent software and equipment without breaking the bank?
Well, to be quite honest with you, you really don't need anything. If you have your smartphone and you can download an app, you don't really need to spend any money, because most of these apps are free and you already have your phone, and you don't need a speaker. You don't need a microphone. You don't need anything. Believe it or not, your iPhone, Android, whatever you have is one of the most sophisticated pieces of equipment. So really this boils down to research again, and it boils down to just downloading apps and
Do you have
using.
some recommendations?
Yes, I mean there are a few. We can definitely maybe add them in text, and we can send them on the board or
That'd
in
be great.
there's a reference. But you really don't need a lot, and you don't need to have a studio to produce a podcast. You can do it from your car if you wanted to, and that doesn't require any money.
All right, that's it.
Wow. Okay.
That was it. We did it.
So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. I can't
Thank
you enough.
Thank you. So yes, there are a lot of details, and if anybody has any questions, again, send your answers to Professor Magrino. But a lot of you are connecting with me online, which is great.
Where can they follow you? Tell them where to follow you.
Yeah, and please follow me on LinkedIn, Margaret Fontana. Follow me on Twitter, Marg Fontana, and Instagram is the same, Marg, M-A-R-G Fontana. And also go follow my podcast. I'm on Spotify, I'm on iTunes, and it's Margaret Fontana Media. And go on there and take a listen and just listen to the format, and then go on my IGTV, check out the format there. Those are like the pre-clips to any of the interviews I've done in the past. Actually, in the last couple of weeks, all of August, I did back-to-back interviews to kind of like resurge on the hit list there.
Great. All right.
All right. So this was great. I appreciate it so much. And then we'll see everybody again soon, right?
Yes, and you'll be in class this week with us. So
Yes, I'm excited. All right, guys, let me know what you think of this thing too today. And then they'll be able to comment as well, right? On their,
yes.
okay. All right. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Margaret. Have a
Yes,
great day.
thank you. Have a great day. Bye.